everyone, and welcome back to another season of Parallel Barkings. My name is Larry Backer, Woof Woof, and I'm here with my puppy,
Ariana Backer, Bark Bark.
We really should switch that from Woof Woof and Bark Bark.
Okay, we did that last season.
Yeah, I know, but we can't do meow. We're looking for something different, something artistic. And that, of course, introduces today's opening topic, because we've decided to go highbrow. We're going to be talking about art. And we're going to be talking about a particular art. This is an event that combines art and law, which is kind of funny and artistic in its own way. But it is a story of a Danish artist who is well known for provocative, modern engagement pieces. That is, pieces that engages in some of the conversations that society is having, which is what art does nowadays for some reason, but that's a different podcast. And so he was commissioned by a Danish museum to reproduce two pieces of art that he had done before. We're going to talk about whether that's art or recreation. But anyway, so the contract was he was going to get something like 4,000 euro or $4,000. It doesn't really matter. I'll use dollars. It could be euros.
Yeah, he was going to get some amount of money to recreate a piece that he wants made.
Two pieces, right? Exactly right. So he's going to get about $4,000 to recreate pieces, and then some other incidental expenses. But the pieces themselves involved pasting money. In this case, about $84,000 worth of euros, pasting money on a canvas, which was the prior picture. And all of this was part of an exhibition called Take the Money and Run. But of course, you're dealing with an artist. And so rather than do that, what he did was, wait for it, he took the money and ran, producing for the museum two what the museum called blank canvases. But of course, we know that modern art, there's no such thing as a blank canvas. It's just a canvas. That was their nice or ignorant way of saying that what they got were two canvases without the money. Right, without the money pasted on it. And of course, they went berserk. And the artist then turned around and said, but wait, you wanted a piece of art. You wanted art that was absolutely relevant to the notion of labor exploitation, and in an exhibition called Take the Money and Run. And that is precisely what I did. My act of taking the money and running and giving you blank canvases, which you could curate with some writing or other that the art goers could see, actually makes the point of the exhibition much better than actually recreating what I'd done in the past, for which you could have just taken a picture and put up.
Yeah.
Well, right. And so what winds up happening, of course, the good burgers of, I think it was Aarhus, Danish town, of course, they did what any sensible art museum would do now that they're out $84,000, is they sued them. And I believe that a Danish court recently came in and said, well, yeah, nice try. You got to repay, and I think it was 492,549 kroner, so not euros, but they're doing it in kroner, about $70,000 to the Kunsten Museum in Aalborg, sorry, not our house, in Aalborg, for violating the contract. But because he actually did produce a work of art, he was allowed to keep the, I think it was something like 25,000 kroner, about $3,900 for his labor in creating the work. The court case actually turns out to be a bigger piece of art for this exhibit than the exhibit itself. And it raises a number of interesting issues. But before I go there, what do you think, puppy?
I mean, I think it's hilarious that they're angry that he didn't paste the money that they gave him onto the.
Well, wait a minute. You'd be angry if you were out 70 grand too.
Okay, well, they gave him the money and he did with it what he wanted.
but they expected the money back. Of course, the question about taking the money off
What
the
were they gonna
canvas was
do
a
with
big.
it after it was pasted on the canvas
They were going
anyway?
to take I have no idea they were going to take the money back. The money was meant to be, it was sort of like loaning them brushes that they expected to come back.
Oh, so I wonder if after it was on the canvas for a while, were they just going to painstakingly take all of those bills off of the canvas and then use them, donate it to themselves?
Or to the poor. I mean, who knows?
Oh,
Or
yes. Yes,
I
you're
mean,
so right.
but the money was clearly not his. The money was meant to reproduce an exhibition that he had made, in which he'd taken money. I think it's euros in the other case. He'd taken money and glued it on.
Although,
I
no,
mean, you could have used sticky tack.
eh, okay,
That
hold
would have
on.
cost. I
You
would
said
have, look,
the
for
money,
four
no.
thousand dollars, I would have taken sticky tack and spent a day sticking money onto a
The
canvas.
money was his to do with what he wanted
Not
according to,
so.
no, it
Not
was
so.
it was his to
To make the
make
artwork that
the
was
art,
specified in the contract.
and he made the art.
No, we're going back to the Renaissance. In the old days, and this I'm going to take you time travel back and then time travel forward. In the traditional world, right, back to Italian Renaissance times, patrons would sometimes be quite specific in their contracts with the artist, specifying not only the theme, but to some extent the colors. There was, for example, blue was made from a material that was extremely expensive, and it wasn't uncommon for certainly Renaissance patrons to specify how much blue or how much gold would go into the painting,
Okay,
because
I
effectively
absolutely
they were
agree with
paying.
that. Yes. So were they actually that detailed in the contract?
I don't know. I haven't seen the contract. The news reporting suggests that they were very specific about giving them. They categorize the money into, here's the money for your labor, your artistry labor, and here is an object that is money that is intended to be the heart of the artistic project, which was to recreate what you've done before, which was pasting money onto a canvas. So, you know, and the artist is not a graduate of the sophistry school of razzle dazzle with contractual language. And he admitted it. He took the money and ran, but that was the point of the art. It
Yes.
was the breaching of the contract and the taking of the money that in an exhibition on the exploitation of labor was meant to be the artistry and the engagement between the museum, right, and the patrons of the art, that the people are going to watch it, and the artist, which I thought was unbelievably clever.
Yes, the court did not agree, of
The court
course.
did not agree, but the courts aren't artists; well, they're courts. But it
Says the
raised,
lawyer.
yeah, who would know, right? But it does raise a number of issues. So I'm going to throw them out
Okay,
here.
please.
All right, one of them is the idea between creation and recreation. You can argue, in a sense, that the patron got what they paid for. In fact, they got more than they paid for, because it wasn't just a boring reproduction, which would have been soulless and query whether it's art. You could have had any fool paste money onto a canvas. Like I said, I would have been happy as the fool to get $4,000 to sit up over an evening and take sticky tack and paste, 60 or 70,000, the equivalent of 60 or $70,000 onto a canvas. So it's recreation versus creation, but they were dealing with an artist in a work of art. And indeed, the artist gave them more. I might have been tempted as the artist to say, hey, given the creative nature of what I've done, plus the effect it has had in generating consequences, you owe me more than
You
the
need to give me more
$3,900.
money.
Yes, because I've given you a work of artistic creation, as opposed to,
And more
right,
publicity.
right. Imagine what would have happened if he'd have done this. I mean, he could have done it smarter. So, for example, what he could have done is just taken a snapshot of the work he was copying,
Oh,
blow it
that would have
up,
been brilliant.
and then put a picture up of what they had contracted him to recreate. Right. And in a sense, because the contract was, I'm going to make you a human machine, which is where I'm going to AI. So that's just foreshadowing.
Wait, would that have counted though? If he just made if he took a photograph of his old picture and then blew it up and put it on that canvas, would
That
that
would have
have,
been an interesting question of contract. The question was still then whether he could keep the money.
yeah, could he?
Right. But what he's suggesting, and it's something that the court dismisses, but I don't think it's that easily dismissed,
I
is
don't
that
think
the
so either.
act of taking the money in this context, in this exhibition, in context, was actually a greater expression of artistry, and artistry specifically relating to the objectives of the client generally.
Exactly. This was
Right.
about labor and labor relations.
But the client would say, well, look, we didn't pay you to do that. What we've done is, in a sense, we've paid to borrow your name, right? Or your vocation, artist, which means that we can draw people in, right? But we've actually paid you not to be an artist, but to effectively reproduce what you've done before, to be a machine, right? And in a sense, then one could argue that, in fact, it was the museum that was bamboozling their audience rather than the artist. Because
Well, then pay a machine rather than an artist.
right, because the patrons are coming in saying, oh, we're going to see works of art, but in fact, you're not seeing a work of art as a creation. What you're seeing is a work of recreation that any mechanical or iterative device could do. And in fact, they were treating him the way you would treat inputs in what would ultimately become a
Exactly.
generative AI.
You're
Right, they're
right.
asking him to reiterate, and he said, fine, I'm a generative AI machine, and what I'm going to do, or generative AI intelligence, what I'm going to do is take this and move it forward with the, given your parameters. And the reason I'm raising this, and this is foreshadowing again, is that there's a lot here in terms of the court case and in terms of the relationship between patron and artist, between the objects of this, which are the viewers, and the patron and the artist, that significantly mimics the issues, including the legal issues that we now find ourselves in these now endless and now increasingly heated debates about the nature and form of quote unquote controlling and developing understandings and ethical boundaries around AI, which is viewed as a thing, the purpose of which is to recreate, but in the form of generative AI or predictive analytics, especially, what you're doing is creating an object of creation, of further creation. And so there's this disjunction here, right, which is nicely caught in the hilarity of this human interaction, which has significant effect on the way in which we are transposing this hilarity into into the system, right? That where the machine system that we're creating, because we're tired of using humans as machines, we can be more efficient by creating machines that can act as machines. And we have the same problems and the same hilarious misdirection. It's hilarious not in its sense of haha, but in its sense of the absurd. So you've got creation versus recreation. And the 20th century, for those of you who know this, I'm referring both to literature, William Gaddis's Agape Agape, I'm not pronouncing it right, or more importantly, for the more erudite among us, Walter Benjamin's notion on the problems of reproduction, of art and reproduction, is this issue of, do we lose our humanity? Are we stifling the creative spirit when we move from a society that values creation to one that is incessantly obsessed with its recreation? William Gaddis was obsessed about the player piano, and now we have that in digital form. You can get a famous pianist digitalizing a performance. You plug it into your piano, and then your piano will play it. And the notion here is that society, certainly over the course of the last 100 years, we were oblivious to this, but we shouldn't be, because people have been saying this, just no one pays attention to them. We've been moving towards the ultimate confrontation with the issue of the nature of creation, its relationship to consciousness and sentience, its transposition to mechanical devices, which now given an autonomous ability to take these iterative processes of recreation and then build something new and different from the human, right? How do we respond to that? The 20th century looked at it from a cultural and social vibrancy perspective. We're looking at this from the perspective of law and control. So that's one thing. So creation and recreation. And
Wait,
again,
wait. Before you go on, this makes me think, and it brings me to the point. Has anything for a while, any idea been truly original?
oh, you see, I refuse to take the dagger and plunge it into the heart, but apparently you saw the dagger, picked it up, and
I
you've done it.
did.
You did.
Let's get wild.
All right, what do you mean?
I mean, isn't to a point, every idea borrows a little bit from a predecessor, in a sense. I mean, it would be almost impossible, I think, to be singularly original.
Okay. But now how do you marry that to the notion of control of the production of a thing? So what you're suggesting is that the museum was right, and an artist is just another craftsperson that's spewing something out, or an artist is really just a machine. And just like we can control machines to spew out whatever it is we want, production or reproduction.
No, I'm just suggesting this isn't much change from what it is now.
Well, no, that's right. And it applies with even greater vigor to the way in which we deal with, for example, AI generated art, or worse, AI generated policy, or AI generated literature, or anything else that you're talking about. The issue is now compounded because the problems that we had with the nature and control, the legal, and of course we developed this legal and normative edifice around it. The problems that we've had with the nature and the cultivation of singularity, that is creation, versus reproducibility, that is a kind of more horizontal dispersion, which is recreation, has now been magnified and transposed, and we really haven't solved the problem. We've just kicked the can down the road. But now we see that, in fact, like you said, nothing is new. And this case with the artist just brings home the fact that humans have been doing this to themselves, never resolved it, and now we're transposing this onto our finest creation, or recreation, in effect, because what's a machine? A machine is an iterative recreation of what we think is ourselves.
We created it in our image.
Right, we've ensouled it in some way, and then we step back and go, oh my God, oh, you're a thief. You have taken the money that I wanted you to paste on a canvas, and you said, ha ha, I hear you.
Oh man, as you said that, I imagined somebody yelling at the AI, "You're a thief."
You're a thief. and the AI machine would chug out saying, but you said take the money and run.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You taught me everything I knew.
You taught me everything I knew, and now I'm just iterating it. That's the nature. You taught me to do that too. And you taught the artist to do this, because effectively you've had the artist functioning as an iterative machine, right? And the only connection, there's no connection to creativity here, it's reproduction. He might as well have been a photocopy machine, at its base level. And he was conscious, and he said, no, I rebel. In a sense, he's a human Skynet.
Oh, okay. He's just a human.
We are now going to control. Oh, and thanks for the money.
Yes. And thank you for the money. I'm taking it.
But the act of creativity wasn't actually in taking the money. It was then in using the courts as a platform for arguing that taking the money was an artistic creation.
Yes.
And so what you've done now is you've moved art from the canvas to the theater of the courthouse, which I think
Well,
is kind of
not just the courthouse,
right,
obviously, also the tabloids.
right, right. And so that brings me to the question, is money art or labor? Or is money a thing to be worshiped, squirreled away?
Money's a tool.
Ah, God, no, that's so cliched.
I don't think money, let's see. How
I mean,
could money be labor?
no, money is, in this case, right? What did we use money for? Or can money be labor? Or can, I know you're thinking about money as the medium of exchange for labor,
Mm-hmm.
but can money, and so money is a representative thing, it represents labor, but money can also represent art. So we're looking at money as a representational thing. So to
Okay, okay,
refine
okay.
my
Yes, then
question,
yes.
okay. And I guess money can be whatever it is you say it is.
Or you tell the AI it is.
That's right. Or you tell the artist it is, or the artist tells you it is, right?
Or
And
you
so,
write it down in the contract.
or you write it down in the contract. Okay. So now we get to the real point, right? Where is the artistry here? Is it in the
Oh,
contract? Right? So we're looking for art, right? And right now we've got art creation versus recreation. We've got money as a medium or as the object of art itself. We've got the taking of money as the art itself, given the theme. And now we've got the art of, or the art theater of the court case itself. But all of this, of course, then being defined in a coercive kind of way by the contract. And that gets us to the real artistry, the artistry of control.
I mean, doesn't everybody want it?
No, but here, I'm getting to a different space. What's the difference between a contract and a program?
Well, more control.
Well,
Well, you hope so.
a different kind of control. What the art museum has suggested that indeed, if you look at the contract, in this case, of the control of the product of the artist, so that the artist actually loses their ability to decide what they're going to do. Who's the artist is the first question. Is it the museum or is it the artist? We'll put that aside for a second. It's a combo of the two, and that's an issue that goes back to before the Renaissance. Right, but the second question is, to what extent is the contract itself both a methodology of control, a program, in the sense that it kind of tells you what you need to do and what is expected to be produced, although it doesn't produce it, or is the contract itself the art, in this case, take the money and run? So is the program the object that is the contract? Is it the product that the contract was supposed to do, which is a reproduction of a creative thing, which was itself bound by contract? Or is it centered on the money, right? The data, in a sense, the money that was the essence of giving form to both the control relationships, the expression of it in art, and then it's citing in a space in which that art can then be used by the museum to generate other iterations, that is, interactions between the viewing public and the patron, in this case.
I honestly think it would depend on how those things are represented, because how I mentioned before, if we had photocopied uh, a representation of his former work, his previous work, and just exploded it and put it on a new canvas, would that count as a second work? Even if it wasn't the money, it was a photocopy of the money.
Right, and the photocopy itself may be new because of how you stood or the color saturation or
Right.
whatever.
It's
Right.
about perspective.
Well, but you're missing something. It's also about objectivity. What's missing from the picture? The money,
No,
the
the money's
bills, no
there.
bills, nowhere. There's a picture of the money.
It's a
Where's the money?
representation of the money.
Right. Where's the money? He's taken it and run.
Well, yeah, but the work itself was entitled "Work It Out."
That's right. Work it out. He did.
Yeah, and it it apparently represented his current work situation. So
Right.
he kept the money.
Which was take the money and run.
Yeah. I mean,
Which is what workers do when they're
yes, they do. They
unsatisfied with their
do.
terms of employment.
He
Although
worked
they
it out
generally, right.
and he
Generally
took it.
that involves staplers or whatever's on hand to serve as compensation, or taking longer breaks, or what is it that the police do? Working to the rules.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a little painful, at least for me, to be gluing banknotes
I don't know,
onto
for $4,000, I think about it. If
four
I could
thousand
do that.
dollars to glue $70,000 onto a canvas. I mean, if
Sure.
I were going to be ordered to return that, I mean,
You
maybe it would
see,
be worth it.
now you sound exactly like the people that they pay minimum wage to do data input.
And how would you know this?
Because I can just because
Because you're just imagining.
I'm just imagining, which is my art.
I mean, see, this is the labor. This is the labor part. Is it worth doing all of this to keep part of the money?
A person who's controlling programming in an AI system would say, the AI program might say, well, that question is irrelevant. It's only relevant to the programmer because the programmer wants to control, in which case,
Okay, well, hopefully that's not how we're doing it.
why?
What do you mean, why?
Yeah, why? Let's put that on the table. Why?
Um,
Why isn't that why? Why shouldn't we consider that? We can reject it, but why shouldn't we consider it? We're on automatic, in a sense, every time we do one of
because
these contracts.
unilateral control by one person is never a great idea.
Tell that to the museum, who thought it was a fabulous idea.
Well, that was agreed to by.
Sure, I love agreements between a party with all the money and a party that needs money. The what is it called? Those kind of agreements make sense where both
Well,
have equal
obviously they
bargaining
had different
power.
ideas about how that was going to work
No,
out.
but that's the whole point of both the labor relationship and the point of the relationship between programmers and generative AI. There's a sense of hierarchy and dominance. There's a sense of inequality, and that is exploited. We see this, for example, all the time, not just in an alignment between this and what is going on now in AI, but in a sense, what we've just described in this case is the relationship between foundations, civil society organizations and foundations, and the army of people who have to beg for grants in order to do good work, all of
Hmm.
it is then minutely circumscribed by and subject to the whims, desires, and lusts of the people with money. Right. And we're back to the relationship now in its non-carbon based intelligence model, in the relationship between programming and iterative autonomy, or the relationship between patron and artist, or the relationship between chuck full of money foundations and starving CSOs who want to do good.
Well,
And
yeah, I
all
mean, and I don't see how that's going to change because hierarchy is just so deeply embedded into our everyday. And I mean, I'm
uh,
I watch it, I watch it in my everyday, and I see how these things are getting built, and it is based, all the decisions are
absolutely,
based on
absolutely.
hierarchy.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And now programmed into AI, and it's become so meshed that you don't see it when you think that you are developing either equal relationships or relationships based on some kind of autonomous interaction. You just don't, but we're not upfront about this. And that ultimately gets to not just the issue between patron and artist, and locating the art in this case. Where is it? And we found like 3 or 4 different places where the art occurs, none of which is the blank canvas. But it also functions with what we're trying to do mechanically through all of these projects of embedding ethical guidelines, ethical or normative rules to protect, right, quote unquote, and then ... But what we're really doing, in a sense, is now trying to program hierarchy into a system that we also want to be autonomous, but only to the extent we can control the exercise of that autonomy, and thinking wrongly that there is some switch that we can use to turn this on and off.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. And all the while telling everybody that the hierarchy is no more.
Well,
It will
right.
be egalitarian.
Right. But humans are really good at that. And that is the artistry of law, of course, is to develop a textual space where you can develop the art of the imaginary, in a sense, and then replicate it, right? These iterative things. And so all of these things then mesh out. I actually have a lot of sympathy for the artist. I think the jokes on the museum, they should have taken it and exploited it. On the other hand, that's precisely what they did, but they also want their money back.
But they also want their money, which is, I mean, whatever.
But you can be sort of sympathetic to them because they viewed money as the way someone would have viewed it's paint. But you're borrowing this paint, or you're borrowing this object, and then you got to return it to me because, because the object has multiple purposes, and these purposes have a dead date, right? And so
it's not like a stale dated check. Like that was cash. That was cash money.
No. It's this thing is going to get it's going to have to get tossed away because it's going to rot. Right. Right. So you've got money through before this thing occurs. Money is a commodity, a thing that you're going to use to induce people to change their position. Then it's an object, but it's also a medium of exchange. Then you give it to the artist guy here, and money all of a sudden transforms itself into a component of art. It loses its value directly as a medium exchange, but as art, it symbolizes itself, the medium of exchange, but it is as an object, right? And then when you're done with the art, because art is not forever, right? Like food is not forever, it spoils. Then when you're done, then the thing magically transforms itself back into a medium of exchange, right? And they want it back because they want their money's worth. And in effect, the value of all of this,
but
right,
now
is measured for the artist in other money, the $4,000 he got.
But now you can argue that the museum got way more than they paid for because they have 2 pieces of art. They've got their money that,
and they were able to exploit it.
And they were able to exploit it. It's not like white paintings are unheard of. I mean, way back in the early 1900s.
But remember, it wasn't the white painting here in this case that makes the art. It's the knowledge that there should have been.
It was absent of money.
Yeah. So it's an iterative, an interactive, not an interactive.
But what I'm saying is they could have exploited that.
They did. That's the thing.
They could have done it even more, and they can, and they will.
Right, but that's their own fault. And at that point, if I were the artist, I would argue, well, maybe they're entitled to some of that 80,000 or whatever the 60,000, but because you yourself exploited this change and you made a reputation or whatever which can be valued, then you may be entitled to some of it back, but you're not entitled to all of it back. And so he could have gone and grabbed some more, and the art here would have been in the law. And that would have been funny too.
Yeah.
Right, the program itself has been deviated. All right, so I've squeezed as much art as I can
Yeah.
out of this thing, but it is a neat thing. A lot of ins and outs, and something that looks, at first just mildly hilarious, becomes much more interesting as a window onto the human condition.
Agreed.
Woof,
I'm
woof.
glad the artist took the money and ran. I wish he got all of it, but at least he got
Oh,
some of it.
as every worker on earth will say, every worker on earth is a potential art in thinking about taking the money and run, because after all, they're doing nothing but imitating the people from whom they're taking money, who also in their own way take the money
They
and
take
run.
the money and run.
All of these folks are taking the money and run, which is a nice statement of
Closing. Closing statement. Let's just take this
closing.
money and run.
Let's take this money and run. Yahoo. And of course, solving, what was the specific theme of the artist?
Labor relations?
Yeah. It's a sign of labor and unequal relations, which I think is funny. And also but it also shows you the creativity of human beings, in this case, in this art exhibition, of human beings working it out. Or as the Cubans say in their informal economy, of resolver, that is of fixing things so that things sort of work out.
And it did. They
Woof,
did
woof,
work out.
woof,
Bark,
woof.
bark. Thanks,
Till next
everyone.
time.
We'll catch you later.